Hi friends, Doug Pratt, welcoming you to this session of Dialogues as a part of the Life Academy of First Church. Our guest today is Congressman Frank Wolf. Frank served for 17 consecutive terms in the U.S. Congress, 34 years, retiring 6 years ago when he stepped out of the cauldron of government. And during his time in office and serving our nation, he especially gave focus to human rights and to religious freedom. Frank has traveled all around the world, has been an active advocate, and at times a controversial one for the causes he deeply believes in. Frank is from Philadelphia originally, graduated from Penn State with a law degree from Georgetown. He and his wife Carolyn have 5 children. They live in Northern Virginia. Frank is a member of Vienna Presbyterian Church, and when he and Carolyn spend time in their winters here in Southwest Florida, they regularly worship with us here at First Church. He is the author of a book about his life and his work in Congress entitled Prisoner of Conscience, and was a speaker here at the Bonita Christian Forum 4 years ago. Frank, it is great to have you here as a part of Dialogues, and we welcome you. And we'd like to hear a little bit about your spiritual background and what made you the man you are. How did you come to Christ? Could you tell us that story?
Well, it's kind of a long process. I was raised in a Christian family. My mom and dad made sure I went to church every Sunday. A little church in Vienna, rather Southwest Presbyterian Church in Southwest Philadelphia. I really became a Christian. I went to a Billy Graham rally in 1961, Philadelphia Convention Hall. And if you've been to a Billy Graham rally, they gave an altar call. And I had just graduated from college, and I wanted to go forward, but no one with me went forward. If you recall, they say in the buses, we'll wait for you, and nobody went. And so I always said, if I ever had another chance, I would go forward. And then in 1975, in our church, Vienna Press, before Pete James came there, they had an evangelist come to the church, and he gave an altar call. And my wife ran forward, and I ran after her. Wow. And I gave my life publicly to Christ. And that was kind of the beginning. Then when I got into Congress, I joined a small covenant group, really, that was set up by Bill Bright and Doug Coe, if you knew Doug Coe.
Who was the leader of the fellowship.
The fellowship,
in
right.
Mm-hmm.
And there were 4 of us, and 2 of us we're still all good friends now, but Tony Hall, a Democratic member, became my best friend in Congress. We did everything together and still do. His wife and my wife are very close. We had a 4 covenant group. It was Tony Hall, it was Dan Coates, who was a senator from Indiana, ambassador to Germany, and then the DNI in the previous administration, and Bob McEwen, a great member from Ohio. And we prayed together and worked together and covenanted together. And so that was the sort of so I really became a better Christian going to Congress, and so it's kind of maybe counterintuitive. But
who were the influences that helped you in your spiritual growth? Who were the ones that impacted you the most?
Well, there were several. Chuck Colson. I have read all Chuck's books. Chuck became a very good friend of mine. One of my daughters worked for Chuck at Prison Fellowship. One of my other daughters married a fellow who traveled with Chuck for about 2.5 years, Hal Whitman. And they run a Christian school up in Princeton called the Wilberforce School. Chuck was kind of a mentor when I had issues I wasn't really sure I would call Chuck. And another James Dobson. Jim's books have had an impact on me and my family in a very, very big way. Bill Bright. They're 3 of the ones. But then the relationship that Tony Hall and I had, praying with each other. Many times when I was going to cast a vote, before I told my leadership, I would talk to Tony. And so Tony and Dan Coates and Bob McEwen, it's kind of like when 4 dentists get together, they must talk about the drills. Well, when 4 members of Congress get together, there was something,
about the bills.
They talk, the friendships and the understanding and the bipartisanship. Again, Tony, a Democrat, we just became almost like brothers. And so I think that helped shape.
Wow. In what ways did your faith impact your work in Congress?
Well, I I hope every way, because I incorporated my faith in everything that I did, the votes that I cast. I was the author of the National Commission Against Gambling. That came about. I was author of the urged Reagan to do the National Commission Against Pornography. The trips that I would take in, that I would go with Tony, we would go to different places. So the bill that made international religious freedom part of our foreign policy, what passed in 1998. So I would hope my faith everything I did, I would hope so. And also my wife's faith is very strong.
Mm. Carolyn has been a strong support to you.
But yeah, she's been very strong, yeah. Without my wife, I would have been a claims adjuster at Geico, and probably not a very good one.
Well, you've been out of the hot seat for 6 years now, so you can see things from a little different perspective than those who are in the middle of the daily battle may be able to see. So I want to ask you for your candid opinion of the state of Congress and the state of government in Washington right now, and don't hold back.
Well, I think we're in a very difficult time. There is not the bipartisanship that there used to be. The nation is polarized. We are not, but the Congress is so polarized.
The relationships you saw are not there?
No. In 1981, when President Reagan was shot at the Washington Hilton, if you recall, Tip O'Neill went to George Washington Hospital and pushed his way through the guards. Nancy Reagan did not want all the members of Congress coming down there. And Tip, who was not a close friend of President Reagan, Tip went and kneeled by Reagan's bed and prayed with him and kissed his hand. You think that could happen today? Do you think that would be... I think the partisanship is probably our biggest problem. Secondly, I think we're facing a economic situation that not many people talk about. When President Carter, who I thought was a very good man, it is a good man, and frankly, what President Carter did since he left the presidency was amazing. He's probably been one of the best
ex-presidents.
And he's done amazing things. A good man. When President Carter left the White House in 1980, the debt was about $670 billion. It was under $1 trillion. Today, not even counting the package that's ready to pass this week, in 4 years from now, at the end of President Biden's first term, the debt will be $45 trillion minimum, not counting that package and not counting other things. And in 2028, the debt will be $78 trillion. I mean, this is beyond. And so I think we're going to have an economic crisis, and the deficit doesn't seem to impact. If you recall, there was the Simpson-Bowles Commission, and people forgot. I mean, so I think there. Secondly, China is going to be our biggest existential threat to the country. I mean, frankly, there's genocide, officially genocide, taking place to the Uyghur Muslims. There's genocidal activity. I slipped into Tibet and saw it firsthand, and just with regard to the Tibetans, Protestant pastors are being arrested in Hong Kong. If anybody's been following, it's like nobody's paying attention. Hong Kong, people, Martin Lee and others used to come by my office, are now in jail. And so I think China will be an existential threat and I think when the next crisis comes, not Republican, not Democrat, don't think about that. We've always had crisis. We had World War I, then we had a thing called the Depression, then we had World War II, then we had the Korean War, and then we had the Vietnam War. So they always come. There will be no relationships to kind of come together. You can't attack somebody and go after them and criticize them and condemn them and rip them apart and then come and say, let's sit down and work these things out. I think we're coming into a tough time.
When September 11th, the attacks occurred, you were in Congress. Was there a unity that we wouldn't see today?
There was a unity. The members of the House went out and sang out on the steps of the Capitol, "God Bless America." There was a unity like you've never seen before. It was together. Some of my very best friends in Congress, Democratic members. I mean, Jim Slattery from Kansas. And I mean, there's no more. It's just not there. So we always felt if you sit down with someone and break bread with them and pray with them and find out, you become friends. So then when there's a problem, you come together. Tony and I used to travel to Africa and different places together. We'd travel together. I trusted him completely. So if there was a problem, we could come together and it was not a big deal. I mean, now those relationships are gone. There's great division in the country. And so I think we're going to be facing a very difficult time. And I think we've always come together. I'm not so sure it's going to be very easy now to come together.
Okay. As we think about beyond the Beltway, beyond Washington, what are your greatest concerns for the country as a whole in the 21st century?
Well, I think economically, we won't, I mean, 45 trillion in debt. Secondly, China is an existential threat that you're seeing. I mean, there's more persecution taking place today in the world, today, at this moment, than there has been at any other time in the history of the country, ever. We see domestically, I was the author of the National Commission Against Gambling. At that time, the gambling, you had to go to Las Vegas or Atlantic City. Now I think there are only 2 states, Utah and Hawaii, that don't have gambling. I mean, now it's Virginia, which I never thought Virginia building casinos and gambling is an addiction. It is, I'm not going to say gambling is a sin, it is an addiction. There's a certain number of people who have a gene that are addicted and they can't stop. And so marijuana, I mean, legalization, they're legalizing marijuana in the state of Virginia, the state of Jefferson and Washington and Madison. And it's all over. Prominent former members of Congress are representing
the marijuana growers.
I mean, you find former members of Congress and during the Reagan years. God bless Reagan. No lobby firm in Washington would have ever represented the Soviet Union. Now the number of lobby firms of former high-ranking officials representing China and other countries that are Turkey, who aided and abetted ISIS, and Egypt, who's persecuting Christians. So I think we're seeing a sort of a moral, and lastly, I think we're seeing a crisis in the church. If you look at the Barna studies, the number of the millennials and Gen Z that are leaving the church. Now, the ones that stay are strong. I mean, you got some of these young kids are really strong in their faith, but a lot are leaving, and so we're seeing a breakdown of the family. I was also the author of the National Commission Against Pornography. Pornography is now
everywhere.
And it really burdens me and troubles me about where we're going to get. The good hope is God is in control, and I pray every night for a revival. But I think that's really, I think we're going to go through some pretty tough times. I would hope and pray that we can get back to the days whereby Republicans and Democrats could come together, and the church could. But I think that's about where we are, unfortunately, today.
What are some things you'd recommend American Christians either read or watch to be informed and to prepare ourselves for the days ahead?
I think the Colson books, we're ready to start at. I'm on the board at a Christian college up north, Patrick Henry College, and they want to start a Chuck Colson chair. And I think the Colson books, one of the best books Chuck ever wrote, he wrote after he died. Ann Morris got all of his old memos. It's called My Final Words. I don't know if I've almost talked to no one who's ever read Chuck's. It's called My Final Words. One of the most powerful books you'll ever read. Jim Dobson. I raised my kids on Jim Dobson's books. I won't go into why, but I raised them, and my kids. I was never home for a period of time when I read Jim's books. I looked at Jim's tapes. On one tape, he recites the words of Cats in a Cradle, Silver Spoon, Little and Boy. Just Jim Dobson's books. My kids used to talk about BD and AD. BD was before Dobson, and AD was after Dobson.
So that changed your family life.
Jim Dobson, all Chuck's books, and then Bill.
And a book that's getting a lot of attention, a new book in this past year by Christian scholar Rod Dreher. Do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, it's a pretty powerful book. He interviews people that were doing like a Rodnikov from Russia and people there, and about what they learned going through it. And the basic message is that what they went through in Russia, in Romania, in Bulgaria, many of the people who lived in those countries came here, and they now can't believe what they're seeing here because they left there. And so it's a that's
Live Not by Lies.
Live Not by Lies.
By Rod Dreher.
Yeah.
And he talks about, I've read the book, it's pretty powerful.
Yeah.
Talks about the threat of socialism or a powerful government, but also the threat of thought police or correctness as it's enforced aggressively.
We're reaching the cancel culture. There was a movie recommended by a World magazine, Martin Olasky, the other day. It's in the latest edition. There are two movies he mentions. One is called Within the Whirlwind. It's a very true. Both of them are true stories, absolutely true. It's not but the cancel culture and what took place, and then people sent to Siberia, and the gulags, and then another one was Mr. Jones 2020 again. So when you look at the surveys about many of the kids on American college campuses, they don't really see the threat of socialism and some of these things that we were conditioned to think and be concerned about. So I think, but God is in control, and I think these are difficult times. And some of these kids, I feel sorry for them. They're good kids on the campus. They're interested in fighting sexual trafficking and doing these things. Unfortunately, many of the universities, there's been the long march through the universities, and many of them have become so liberal and so,
secular
to the point that you look at, go look at Jonathan Edwards was the president of Yale University. If Jonathan Edwards came back to look at Yale today,
he'd be shocked.
He'd be shocked. And you can go on. You can go on, but I won't.
Frank, during your retirement years, what are the things you're involved in?
We work with the Vice President's office on the issue of helping the Christians in Iraq, and I've been very grateful to Vice. It was very moving to see Pope Francis go to northern Iraq, and many of the places that I've been to, and I thank him for going, because he was an encouragement to the Christian community. More biblical activity took place. Nasiriyah, and the Pope went there, and Mosul, ISIS blew up Jonah's tomb. The Vice President Pence did a great job in reorienting and helping there. So we've worked with them. We've also worked with Franklin Graham's group on some of those issues. And then a group, Nigeria. There's genocide taking place in Nigeria today. Genocide. Mm-hmm. In fact, Boko Haram in Nigeria has killed more Christians, and I'm speaking slowly because people won't believe this, has killed more Christians in Nigeria than all the people that ISIS killed in Iraq and Syria combined. And so we're trying to help the Nigerian community. The Christian faith in Nigeria is incredible. But they say, Mr. Wolf, does the church in the West care about it? So we're trying to help different groups like that. I think religious freedom is very, very important. President Reagan said the words in the Constitution And the words in the Declaration of Independence were a covenant, not a contract, a covenant with not only people in America or in Philadelphia in 1776 and 1787, but a covenant with the entire world. It's fulfilling that covenant so that people can worship God as they see. And the faith of the Christian community in Karakush, in Mosul, it's unbelievable. And so I was very grateful to see the Pope go, and I think I appreciate what Vice President did, but working to help people to maintain Christianity. Christianity is being, the Christians in Coptic Christians in Egypt are being persecuted. The Christian community in Lebanon is having a very, very difficult time. We see growing anti-Semitism around the world, and so those issues are the issues that are trying to work with groups to help on issues like that.
Wow. And it's obvious your passion is not just to protect your own, the Christian community, but you've defended the Yazidis, another religious group persecuted in Iraq, and spoken up for Jews and for people of all faiths who are under persecution and attack.
It's every group, all groups, to believe. But I think I worry here. We are seeing in our own country this one bill that's passed the House, the Equality Act. Have you looked to see what that
Where is the danger in that?
I mean, they will literally tell Christian schools how to respond, how to do. I mean, I don't want to get too, but if anyone can, it is.
Boy, is that an assault on the First Amendment?
It is an assault. It's a 50-50 in the Senate. Passed the House, but I think it's
dangerous.
It's very dangerous.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think that the church, now to say one thing controversial, one of my favorite things, I've read it many times, is Dr. Martin Luther King's speech, a letter from a Birmingham jail. And so I believe we need Bonhoeffers in America. We need more Martin Luther Kings in America. And I think that many, this is really very controversial, but I think really many of people of faith are going to have to be prepared to go to jail for their faith. And I remember I was over visiting Germany and with Dan Coates, and he took me to Bonhoeffer's house, and I've read most of Bonhoeffer's books, and Bonhoeffer was hung in Flossenburg State Prison. You could hear the Western artillery. And I think we need Bonhoeffers in the church. They're out there. And let me just say in a positive note, I am appreciative of you and your church. When we're watching, Vienna Presbyterian Church, we then watch here, and when we come down here, but we're grateful, and you First Church is a very powerful and very good. So I just want to congratulate you and the staff.
Frank, if any people want to contact you, have questions or comments after watching this interview, how can they be in touch with you?
Maybe they ought to contact you, because I don't have a staff. My staff is named Carolyn.
Okay.
It's Mrs. Wolf and Mrs. Wolf. I am technologically, and so
great.
I'm about. So maybe if somebody really does it, they can go through you, and
we will forward any emails that are sent to First Church to Frank, and he can be in touch with you as he feels.
One of the things I would like you to think about it, and your listeners, I would like to see the faith community put together a program whereby they bring people over from the former Soviet Union and from Romania and Bulgaria and places, also Cuba and Venezuela, and many who also live here, and send them out into particularly the Christian colleges first, to let them see how life was under Ceausescu, what the danger of socialism was, what the life was like, and Castro, and to bring in people like Natan Sharansky. I was in Perm Camp 35 Shortly after Sharansky got out and interviewed Sharansky's cellmate, and Sharansky can tell you what life was like. And so to bring over the Sharanskys and Solzhenitsyn's children, bring his children over and go on American college camp. So I'd like to see the church come together, not a Republican, not a Democrat. I want to make sure nothing I said was Republican or Democrat. But to go in and go on these college campuses and to put together a great film and video to let these young people, who are good people, know what the potential dangers are, but to let people who have really experienced it and lived it to come in and tell them what they should be concerned about.
Well, that's an exciting vision. So if anyone feels a passion for that, contact us. We'll get you in touch with Frank, and we'll see where that concept can go. Frank Wolf has, in the words of Paul, run the race. He has kept the faith. He has fought the good fight in a very public arena. I am so grateful for him. And he's ready to pass the baton to the next generations who will take it up and be soldiers for Christ wherever we are called. Frank, thank you for being here. We have been blessed, and we are so grateful for your love for your Lord, your service to your country, and we have been inspired and encouraged by your example. So God bless you all.